Hmm. Hmm. Hey, everybody, it's Elysabeth Alfano, and it's the Plant-Based Business Hour. I have such a great show for you today. Someone who truly moves the needle for people, the planet, and animals. He is the new founder of Sustainable Food Ventures. Of course, we know him as the founder of Wild Earth Pets. Ryan Bethencourt, thanks for joining me today.
Elizabeth, great to be with you today.
Oh, so much breaking news. Just you yourself, not just in the world in general, but specifically Ryan Bethencourt has breaking news. I, of course, want to talk wild pets, and we will talk about the pet industry and how that's changing and how you are transforming it. But let's get into the big news, folks. Who are we kidding? Tell us about your newest venture, Sustainable Food Ventures.
Yeah, so Sustainable Food Ventures is a micro VC, micro venture capital fund. Our mission is to support founders who are just getting off the ground. So really often the first check. So Elizabeth, as you and I have talked in the past, I've been an investor, often the first investor in companies like Memphis Meats, Finless Foods, Geltor, Clara Foods, New Wave Foods, Shiok Meats, and now some of the other kind of newer future food companies. And those companies have really grown and become really large companies, large successful companies. The Not Company, which is actually throughout Latin America. And I wanted to continue to do that. I was cutting lots of little personal checks myself. And a lot of people actually wanted to co-invest with me, but couldn't for various different reasons. The check sizes were too small. We just couldn't take that level of capital into those companies. And so I decided that when I heard about a new type of fund structure that AngelList launched, which was called the rolling fund structure, it's a way of democratizing access to early stage investments. So, hi Tina. Yeah, that was actually fun. That's the first time I've seen something like that. And so it was it was really the first time that people could co-invest with you and with me alongside some of these new companies. So when I'm helping these founders wherever they are in the world get off the ground, now mission motivated supporters, investors can actually join us and invest. 5, 10, 20K checks, they can invest on an ongoing basis in the rolling fund. We close once every quarter, so there's like a window. So people can still invest in Sustainable Food Ventures if they're interested in our mission, which is really helping founders from all over the world and all over the US start companies.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I have a couple questions there and also a couple points of clarification. You nonchalantly say, oh, Shiok Meats and Memphis Meats and Nutco, but let's just talk about Nutco for a second. They were this tiny little Chilean company like a year ago, and then they just raised 85 million, I think. Am I wrong about that?
85 million. Yeah, I talked to Matthias. Yeah, I talked to Matthias, the founder and CEO, a couple weeks ago, and he was like, it's over 90 million. It's just the press is not reporting. We raised a little more. And I was like, that's still a lot of money, Matthias. It's still a lot of money.
Yes.
They've really become the most successful plant-based meat company in Latin America. And they launched in Santiago, Chile. I actually reached out to Matthias when he was, before he actually launched Not Mayo, which was their first product in Chile. I actually have a tweet to him, and I basically said, I've heard about you. I'd love to bring you up to San Francisco. We'd love to do something with you in San Francisco. And we backed him. We cut him his first check. And then I helped Matthias, myself and my team at IndieBio helped Matthias as he started to scale, and I helped him raise his first venture round in Buenos Aires, interestingly enough, from Kazakh Ventures. And so then he was backed by Jeff Bezos, started to grow, became the leader in Chile, Argentina, and launched in Brazil. And now actually not only does he have Not Mayo, Not Milk, these are all plant-based products. Right. He also launched the Rebel Whopper in partnership with Burger King. So Impossible up here, up north in North America, is the Impossible Whopper. Down there, it's Rebel Whopper. So it's Matthias through Latin America, Fazenda Futuro, which is the Brazilian plant-based meat company, which is in Brazil for the Rebel Whopper, and that's basically it. And so they've been super successful, and it's exciting to see what they've been able to achieve. And this was all based in the idea that we are in the middle of a transformation in our food system, right? And we can now help these innovators get to the first stage. Often the hardest thing is going from 0 to 1. I have an idea, I don't have money, I don't have resources, I don't have network access. Well, we can help with that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's such an exciting time. I want to clarify for people. So let's say people join you in your rolling fund, then they would be a part of these new companies, perhaps not the funds you've already invested in, or excuse me, the companies you've already invested in,
Correct.
but they
Correct.
would be a part of the new companies that you find. Obviously, if anybody follows you on LinkedIn, and if they don't, they sure should, you really have your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on in terms of the tech aspect of food,
Yeah.
the innovation of food. And I want to talk about that explanation in just a second. But so people can join in at a 5,000 level, a 10,000 level, when usually that's just not possible.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's very, very hard. And so the AngelList platform, the only reason that I'm able to even talk about the AngelList Rolling Fund is because of the Jobs Act. And I know, Elizabeth, you're very familiar with it, but it basically means that smaller investors are now able to participate, and it's a rolling fund. So typically when you raise a venture capital firm, you basically have to raise it very quietly, and then a year later you announce it. And typically it's very wealthy investor, what's called institutional investors, people that are similar to banks, will have invested in it, and that's it. And most people can't take part in it. And so I think what's exciting about this is it does democratize access. If you actually want to be part of it, you want to back, even if it's a relatively small amount of $5,000, $10,000, you can actually do that, and you will take part in investing in these companies going forward. Obviously, not the companies I've already invested in, but the companies, hopefully the future NotCos, hopefully the future Memphis Meats that we'll invest in today, and in 3 to 5 years' time, we'll see them really just transforming the world for better.
Yeah. And I think this really solves a need because so many people are tired of being on the sidelines because they don't have $100,000 or $250,000, usually more like it, check. And here they can participate in the vegan plant-based economy, changing the future for themselves, for the people, planet, animals, their family, their kids.
Yep.
Okay. But how do you decide on who you're going to invest in?
Yeah. So our big focus is we want to open it up to as many potentially diverse minds and people as possible, right? So that's geographic diversity, gender diversity. My partner Marilis, she's very excited about backing women or women identified entrepreneurs. This is something that we are really excited about, and we can go outside of normal geographies, right? So one of the big limitations has been, and I've talked to many potential founders who have really struggled to raise money outside of New York, Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, outside of the major cities in the US. And so really we want to open that up and say, wherever you are globally, we can try and find a way to potentially working with you and backing you and helping you start scaling your business wherever you are. I mean, I think some of the most successful companies that I've helped fund and get off the ground were actually not from the Bay Area. They were from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited about that.
Well, I love that you say democratization of the process because it is going to let in the smaller people who do have money. I don't want to, say the $5,000 ain't nothing because it sure is. So I love that, and of course, when you add up $5,000 for many people, it actually, makes a big difference. But also that you're going to different geographies around the United States. Very expensive to launch a company in San Francisco, perhaps less so in your new home of Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. So you can talk to us about your move in just a second. But I'm wondering, where are you seeing the talent pool coming from? For now, we'll just talk about the United States, but I'm wondering how you're seeing that shake out across the US.
So what's interesting is the same way that we're seeing the rise of new tech cities across the US. Thank you, Stacy. We love you too. We love all of our plant-based vegan pet parents. I love that. I'm going to start doing that too. I'm going to start copying those up. Sending pictures. Right? Actually, I need to be careful with that. So maybe I'll send hugs instead. Okay.
I'll keep it to kisses. You can do hugs.
Kisses are good. I'm gonna be sending hugs. Although I like kisses, but I'm Latin, so I have to be careful.
Conversation takes a turn.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're really seeing a huge diversity. I mean, since we announced sustainable food ventures, we've had entrepreneurs approach us literally from like every area of the US, whether it's Austin, Dallas, Los Angeles, Chicago, Raleigh, Durham, Nashville, Miami. So it's just a sheer amount of diversity that we're starting to see. And I'm super excited what that might mean, right? Once we start to see clusters of, entrepreneurs for good, start establishing themselves across the US. That's not including international, because I'm very excited about what's happening internationally too. right? I mean, India now I think is really, I would say, waking up. And India, with, was it 1.4 billion people, has incredible potential for positive good in the world. And it's just the entrepreneurs in India, which, by the way, have always been incredibly entrepreneurial, mostly in tech and somewhat in biotech, are now going, oh, we can build future food companies too.
Yes. And I love this. They're already naturally predisposed to plant-based. There's so much of their culture is not eating meat, depending on which religious portion of society you believe in. But, a lot of it is based on grains and vegetables. So you're already sort of halfway there.
Yeah. And honestly, it's every region. And, even if we're just talking about the US, every region brings a different flavor to the way that they look at things. I was talking to an entrepreneur a couple of months ago here who runs barbecue just outside of Charlotte.
I know Lee.
Yeah, and
lovely. By the way, shout out to
great?
Wait, hold on. Sorry. It's just shout out to barbecue that is changing the world with its plant-based pulled pork. It is to die for. You go to barbecue.com and you go get yourself some pulled pork direct to consumer. Don't wait. He's got the barbecue flavor and the naked, so you can do up your own barbecue sauce if you've got something special at home. I eat it all the time. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
There we go. Barbecue. Yeah, like that's. But he's bringing like Southern barbecue to plant-based, right? Or I guess plant-based to Southern barbecue. I don't know which way to look at it. And so, I'm super excited to see these entrepreneurs bringing like the local, the regional flavors to us, to all of us, right, across the US and hopefully globally too.
Yes, and I don't want to take the conversation to politics, but one might say there is a sentiment in the US that, New York, Brooklyn, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they think X, Y, and Z, and they stay to their own bubbles. And the truth is there's business everywhere. It's not just in those major hubs, and it's not just those places that have innovation and money and funding and education. I think in North Carolina, right near barbecue, there is a plant-based innovation center.
There is
an important one.
It's in Kannapolis, right? Which is it's actually Kannapolis, just north of Charlotte, and it is run by North Carolina State. And
yes, run North Carolina State.
North Carolina State, and so they have this prototyping facility for food. I mean, it's kind of incredible. It's right there. They're ready to go, plant-based,
state of the art in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah, there we go. And so, I mean, that's honestly, that's one of the reasons why. Myself and my wife, we decided to move here. We really thought that there was so much interesting work going on, particularly in the Research Triangle Park area, which is Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill. There's so much innovation, so much potential, so many great people, culturally so interesting, that if we're going to be funding the future, we want to be part of the new frontiers. And so we think that this is going to be one of the clusters. To be honest, I think the Good Food Institute beat us to it. So the Good Food Institute has already been funding and supporting the Alt Protein student group at UNC. And so they were already here. They're doing the same in Colorado. They're doing the same in a few other clusters. And so, I would almost look at where's the Good Food Institute going, and then see where the next cluster is going to start up, right?
Yeah. And couldn't have this show if I didn't give an enormous shout out, of course, to Bruce Friedrich and the Good Food Institute and all the work that they've done for years. And you have as well, Ryan. But really,
But no, I am in awe of the infrastructure that Good Food Institute has built, and that Bruce, Varun, like many of the others, I mean, dozens and dozens of other incredible people have either worked at the Good Food Institute or come out of the Good Food Institute and actually started something or built something, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit company that moves us in a positive direction.
Yes, and they are global. We're talking about India. They're in India, of course, all throughout Asia, Europe as well. Okay, but we're talking about future of food and how we're moving things forward. So about 2 years ago, I launched this show with Ethan Brown in my kitchen. He actually launched Beyond Meat Sausage in my kitchen before it anywhere else. It was so fun.
What a claim to fame. And by the way, Elizabeth, so that is what you launched the first major product for the US's most successful IPO in 20 years.
In my kitchen. Yes.
In your kitchen.
Of course, Ethan launched it, but it was fun. I'll show you the pictures sometimes. It's fun to see Ethan like frying up in my kitchen. He wanted to get the sausages just right, so he didn't want me to do it. He really wanted to be over the stove himself. So it was super fun. Anyways, we have this conversation about tech and food. And it's one thing for people to say tech in my iPhone, it's fantastic. But people don't want to say tech is involved in their food. Or do they? In a recent post from your online LinkedIn presence, you were saying, food actually is technology. Let's stop pretending that it's not. So I wonder if you could expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we have kind of separated food and technology. Technology is this very sterile thing, and food is this very like organic, natural, ancient thing. But the reality of it is that food is a technology. Our ancestors domesticated both plants and animals 10,000 years ago, right? And it is a technology. Like if you look at the precursors to corn, I mean, many of us love corn. I love corn, and all the beautiful varieties of corn. By the way, like it's just mind-boggling how amazing corn is. But the teosinte, the precursor to corn, was almost an unedible thing that looked like a piece of wheat. If you've ever seen a piece of super hard to like, I couldn't imagine any of us enjoying that. Our ancestors selectively bred corn to make it delicious kernels that we currently enjoy. And so, as a biotechnologist, I'm a biologist by background. I always look at nature for cues on where we can go with things. I view biology as a technology. And so, fermentation is a thousands of years old technology, and we all love fermented foods, right? Like kombuchas, fermented teas, sourdough bread. That's all technology. Kimchi, that's all technology.
I don't love kimchi, but it is fermented. And many people, I don't, I hate it. I hate kimchi. My boyfriend loves it. But yes, many people love kimchi. And of course,
I'm a fan of kimchi. It's very smelly, but I love it. So, yes.
Good. All right. Well, okay. Well, we're getting to fermentation because that's one of the main drivers. We'll get to that in a second. But I love that you say this because just as we're changing the conversation about health, there's been this big pushback, are plant-based foods healthy? And so we've had to have this long conversation of obviously something in a package is not a carrot. We can see that. It's not a head of lettuce. We probably got that too when we scanned it at the grocery store. So we know that it's not a fruit and vegetable, but it is indeed healthier. It's a transition food. It's not something you live on every day, but it doesn't have antibiotics. It doesn't have hormones. It doesn't have animal heme. It doesn't have TMAO, trimethylene N-oxide. It doesn't have cholesterol, and it has a little bit of fiber. So, we're having this long conversation about what is health. And I think we're now starting to have that conversation about what is our food as it changes, as we as a population change. So we're going from 7 billion people to 10 billion people, but you're not getting more land and you're not getting more water. So you've got to be innovative. This is why I almost think that veg tech is how I like to refer to it.
I like that. I like that. Veg tech. I like it. That should be the name of your new fund, to Veg Tech.
See, Brian's got me starting a fund. Stay tuned, everybody. Veg tech is almost an issue of national security because as we move to have 50% more of the world, so 7 to about 10.7 billion people, you're going to have to innovate. And if you're not going to innovate, then you are going to be reliant on other countries 100%. I'm all for free trade, and I'm here to have all countries get along. I'm not trying to say that we need to start putting up barriers. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it is a question of survival for the future. And innovation, particularly in the US, but all around the world, it's where we shine as humans. That's up our challenge alley. So when people say like, oh, it's tech, I wouldn't want it in my food, I sort of say like, yeah, but are you still on a typewriter? Because, we've moved on and there's nothing you could do to the typewriter ever to make me want another one. So there's no point in like helping out meat and dairy and trying to make it a little bit better. We've moved on to computers. There's no innovation to a typewriter that will make it valuable today. And that's how I feel about meat and dairy. There's nothing you could do to that system, which is so widely inefficient and can't feed us at the capacity that we need. And it hasn't stepped up with our growth as a population, not just in the numbers, but also intellectually. It hasn't gone anywhere in innovation that I'm very excited about the combination of food and innovation. Long answer to say, what do you think?
I love it. I 100% agree with you, right? I think that we, meat and dairy, I've actually talked to many executives, Yeah, there we go. Susan likes your veg
you
tech
like
fund. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. At vegan, I love it. Susan, I love it. Keep those ideas coming. I think we need to convince Elizabeth to start her own fund, right? I think she
Oh
has
my
many
gosh.
people who would back her, right? Including
Okay,
me, including me, right? So
Ryan's the best.
yeah, you know, what's interesting is like I've talked to the CEOs of some of these mega corporations, right? Like these, I can't really say who because sometimes they ask for confidential conversations, but they really are not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about doing things differently. So they're like, oh well, I will invest, you know, $400 million in a new slaughterhouse, or $500 million in a new cheese making facility, but not invest $10 million in a plant-based cheese company, or in a plant-based dairy company, or a plant-based meat company, or a cell-based meat company, right? It doesn't make sense to me, right?
No, because it's like investing in the horse and buggy. Like there's
Exactly.
no improvement to the horse and buggy that I would ever
Give me
invest
more
in.
horse and buggy. Give me more horse and buggy. We make horse and buggies. Give me more horse and buggy. It's like, no, you don't. You make
Yeah.
products that people love and eat, and you need to change, right? You need to adapt. And if you don't, we have precedents for that already. The companies that didn't adapt during the digital revolution in 2000, so late 1990s, early 2000, the companies that did not digitize themselves and become more efficient by getting rid of all the papers they had. I mean, there were companies that had files and folders full of their customers in paper. Those companies went extinct. One of the best examples is Kodak. They invented
Right.
digital camera. They invented it.
Yeah.
And then they got disrupted by digital photography because they refused to adopt it. The senior executives literally saw the first digital camera and said, oh, no one will ever want one of that. Plus, we make our money selling film. We don't want to disrupt our own film market.
Mm-hmm. And there you go. And so let's talk about disrupting in full meat and dairy. The last time we spoke, which I want to say was March or April of this year, we were talking about, oh gosh, did you hear Rethink X? This think tank had come out and they said an astounding number that by 2030, meat and dairy would, for all practical purposes, be completely disrupted. They wouldn't have gone away, but they will be disabled because their business has gone down so much and they operate on such small margins that they won't be able to continue. Now, recently you were at an alt protein conference, and I think Food Navigator covered it, that at the conference they were saying 2030, that's going to be a no problem slam dunk.
No problem slam dunk. There was an analyst report that I recently read, actually related to your favorite company, Beyond Meat. And they were actually saying that the analyst, and I can't remember her name, she said that they were predicting that within 18 months, they were predicting that within a decade, Beyond Meat could get to $1 billion in revenue within a decade. Have you seen that one? Yeah. And then, because of COVID and everything that's happened, the acceleration that's happened, they said that they will reach $1 billion in revenue within 18 months. So that's basically a decade of growth in 1 year.
Incredible.
A decade of growth of a company that's out there right now in 1 year, right? So I'm sure Ethan's he probably loves it, but at the same time, when you grow that quickly, I can't imagine that it's probably everything's on fire and he's running around trying to fix things.
Yes, and hats off to Beyond Meat, because right now we look at all their successes, and I can't tell you how much I love you for helping us change the world. But the first 10 years of their company wasn't so easy. They had some lawsuits, they had some name changes, they had some product recalls and stuff. So, God love him for sticking with it. And I would say for their transition into manufacturing in China and Europe, they've done a great job at the trickiest part of growing your business, which is scaling. We talked about going from zero to the first year of being very hard. And then that next challenge is really scaling up. So much to talk about. Do you mind if I switch to that one big challenge that we've got now of scaling up? Okay.
Let's go. Yeah, we can go anywhere. We can go anywhere here.
Okay. We're also going to come back to innovation. There's lots to talk about, but since we're on it, I just want to say almost personally, so I do this show once or twice a week and I talk to a lot of people. I just don't think at this point I can continue to have that conversation about how there's a bottleneck because there's co-manufacturers, because I feel like we all know that's the problem. There's money out there. We know how to do it. Why, Ryan, is this still a problem? It's holding us back. It's a big one. So why?
Yeah, it's the step function. So the problem is that to make a co-manufacturer, you basically need, anywhere between $10 million to $100 million, right? Like, it's a big step function. And so I think for a lot of startups, it's very hard to essentially go out and raise money to scale their business and then say, okay, now I need another 10 to $100 million to build a facility, which, by the way, I will probably mess up because I'm gonna build a facility, I'm not gonna know how to run it, and it's gonna just be a mess. And so I think it's access. We need infrastructure funds. And I think that's what's coming next, which is going to be big funds, multi-billion-dollar funds that are going to be focused on
government.
Private, and somewhat government. So recently, I've been hearing about actually regional and state governments getting very interested in infrastructure. So things that would bring jobs. As we know, most manufacturing currently is done either in the Midwest or in more rural parts of the U.S. where space is more affordable. And so I think what's starting to happen is some of these local governments are seeing opportunities to really expand the jobs. Like, those of us that have lived in major metropolises are kind of spoiled for choice, right? There are usually many jobs, and obviously in non-COVID times, I realize these are different times, but in non-COVID times, usually you have your choice, your pick of jobs. But in many other parts of the US and the world, that's not the case, where the government has to get involved to help create jobs for the people who live in those regions because there aren't as many employers. And so I think there's these local and state governments are starting to wake up and say, oh, if I help with subsidies to build a manufacturing plant, then actually it'll create a lot more jobs. And so I think we're going to see the rollout of infrastructure funds. I wouldn't be surprised if someone out there, at least several people, are currently having that conversation. And so it's coming. I know that the banks are starting to get interested. I've talked to the big banks, like Bank of America, some of the other very large banks who are starting to see that this is not a fad. They're starting to see that plant-based is not a fad. It's real. It is a mega trend. And finally, after 10 years, now finally they're starting to get comfortable with the idea it's not a fad.
Well, so many comments there. So I know that those conversations are happening because I had one yesterday with somebody. But the confusing point for me is the money is there. And I do know, even if it's not government funds, which can take a while, et cetera, and we'll talk about jobs in a second, which is such a huge component of this. But let's say it's just private funds for the moment. I know that there are people who want to back it. And I know that there is the knowledge out there of who can run it, even though it is run different than a meat plant, let's say.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that there's a little bit of pressure. I don't want to misspeak. I may have this wrong. I hope that you'll share your perspective from meat and dairy, that the people who sell the machines, they don't want them to sell the machines to plant-based plants because it will compete with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's a bunch of resistance. Most recently, the most recent bit of resistance that I found is actually it's not dairy or cattle, and this might be surprising for you, but it's seafood. So recently I found out that Shiok Meats was being threatened by the Asian Aquaculture Association, who was basically saying that there was a misrepresentation of the things that Shiok Meat have been saying about the shrimp industry. And it's I think this is the same vested interest that we have here in the US that are basically saying this is a bad industry. We don't want this. Is going to destroy jobs, which is actually the opposite of what's going to happen. It's the opposite of what's going to happen. Someone somewhere, whether it's here, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Asia, are going to build plants, and that's where the jobs are going to go. And so we have to be proactive.
Yes. And I love this because we had started the conversation earlier saying, there's a democratization of the process as you talk about taking small investors at the $5,000 level into your funds. This is the democratization of spreading of wealth. So we have this, I'm speaking just for the US right now, though it does kind of apply across the world. We have this enormous gap between wealth, and a lot of the wealth is concentrated in the cities. And as we see people and the innovators, because that's really where all the jobs come from, 70% of the jobs in the US come from small businesses. So as we see these innovators start their small companies, plant-based around the US, you're going to see infrastructure come and these kind of plants, and you're going to see more manufacturing and more jobs. And once you have a paycheck from a plant-based source, and you assume a family of 4, so that paycheck is affects 4 people, you're going to see people start to change their perspective about plant-based and say they're not so bad. They're paying me my weekly salary. So I think you'll see culture change too.
I think so. And I think for those of us that are building, companies that really are embracing the whole US, right? I think it's really, really important that we are distributed, that we do focus on that. So like Wild Earth, we have one of our hubs is in the Bay Area. We manufacture in the Midwest, right? So we have a lot of really great partners in the Midwest. And then we actually have our new hub here in Research Triangle Park in Raleigh, Durham. And so it's just like we're all across the U.S., East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, middle America, and we love all aspects of our customer base. We have customers in every major metro and non-major metro, every rural area in the U.S. as a direct-to-consumer company at Wild Earth. And so, it's something that I think we are moving in that direction. I think many companies are more advanced than us. Obviously, Beyond and Impossible is more advanced just in terms of their logistics.
Sure.
But being a nationwide company, it's important to realize that it's important to create jobs across the U.S., not just focused in certain geographies.
100%. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Well, we do have a lot to talk about in terms of innovation. So just don't think that we're going anywhere, people. But you brought up Wild Earth. And of course, I want to talk about Wild Earth and all that you've done for the pet food industry. The last time we spoke, I think you told me that the pet food industry is about $87 billion.
Yeah.
But more than that, you told me a horrific statistic. I thought that pet food came from already horrific industry, which would be animal slaughter. But you said that no, indeed, animals are raised for pet food alone. Please tell us about that.
Yeah. So, 25 to 30%, 30% of the meat that's consumed in the US goes to our pets. That is not a waste product. And if you talk to anyone in the meat industry, they'll tell you that they're super efficient at making the use of every single part of that animal, right? So the skin, the bones, the ligaments, the intestines, like the intestines used to go to our dogs 50 years ago, right? Now it goes to hamburgers and hot dogs and, and in the case of chicken, the stuff that's not nice, it becomes that pink slime that we're familiar with, right? So, humans are eating pretty much every single part of the animal, right? Unless the animal is diseased. And that's apparently no longer allowed in pet food, although it appears that it's still somehow getting into pet food. But assuming the animal is not diseased, that whole animal is going to be used for human food. And by the way, Tom, you're exactly right. Vegan dogs have, it's not, there hasn't been a large scale study, but we have noticed and we have seen, including Bramble the dog, that vegan dogs have lived incredibly longer. So Bramble lived to the age of 27. Average dog age is about 11 years, right? So it gives you an idea of,
wow.
I think it's, so one of the things that we're doing at Wild Earth is we're starting these types of studies. We're science driven, right? And so we think that a plant-based diet, a vegan diet for dogs are omnivores. Before everyone starts telling me dogs are carnivores and animal cruelty, unfortunately, a lot of people have this misconception that dogs are somehow carnivores because they come from the order Carnivora. By the way, so do pandas, and they only eat bamboo. But we know, dogs co-evolved with us. They eat everything. I'm not saying that they're vegans, right? Dogs will eat meat. My dog, Lady Liza, she will eat. Somehow she's able to find chicken bones everywhere. I don't know how she does that on the floor, and have to pull them out of her mouth. Used chicken bones, eaten chicken bones. But they can survive and thrive on a plant-based diet. And so what we've seen at Wild Earth, we actually did a study. Actually, Elizabeth, since we talked, we did a study on pet parents that were actually feeding their dogs Wild Earth for 3 months or more. And what we saw is that we saw improvements in a whole host of things. 50% reduction in itching and scratching, 50% reduction in skin issues and allergies. Across the board, it's kind of what you would expect. My hypothesis is that we're reducing systemic inflammation. So we all know that plant-based diet rich in anti-inflammatory compounds, it should reduce inflammation across the body. We assume that that's what it's doing in our dogs too. But we've had incredible success stories for pet parents who've had problems, especially problems with dogs with allergies, food allergies, and skin issues. And so, that's been incredible. And so we really want to continue to do that. One day I would love to prove that Wild Earth makes your dogs live longer, right? I would love to prove that one day. I don't have the data yet, but we're working on it, right? And I think someone mentioned Dr. Ernie Ward, our vet. That's his dream as well, right? That we could actually show that we could help people live help dogs live a longer, healthier life.
Yeah, and it would stand to reason that just like in humans, inflammation is really the base for chronic diseases. And then if you take that away, you have a better chance of recovering from that and reversing chronic disease. And so you would think it would be the same in dogs. Wow, that's wonderful to hear that they might double their lifespan. Really, that's what you're saying.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. Like I still find trouble believing it myself. I'm like, how is that even possible? But it kind of makes sense if you think about what our pets are eating today, right? Which is, they're eating, they've found, the FDA has found melted plastic in the meat, right?
Like in our food.
Yeah, melted plastic. And where does the melted plastic come from? The styrofoam, that packaged meat, and the plastic that comes in just doesn't get taken off, right? So when meat goes bad in the grocery store, where does that meat go? Well, some of it goes to the renderer and it goes to our pets. And what the FDA has found that sometimes, these rendering plants, they don't remove the plastic and the styrofoam. They just throw the whole thing in and it melts with the meat. And so the meat, if you're eating melted styrofoam and plastic, it's a known carcinogen. And so causes cancer, right? And so that is terrible. And there've been contaminated meat as well. There's been examples of, we're not sure quite what it was. We think it might be horse meat somehow getting into our pets' food, where there's been euthanasia drug that's been found, and millions of units of dog food and cat food have been recalled as a result of that. So there are things that just initially, when we started Wild Earth, it just blew my mind. Not only could we have better food for them, but food safety is a huge issue for our pets. And so, we don't have any of that because we're 100% plant-based. We have fungi, yeast, and plants, and that's it.
We're going to talk about fungi in just a second. That's going to be my transfer to the next subject. But before I leave this subject, I want to say, usually, like with plant-based foods, it's consumers that are forcing the change with corporations and then governments. Like the very last thing to ever get, if you ever think government's looking out for you folks, you must advocate for yourselves. And if you don't want to stand on the street corner with a sign, I feel ya, although I love my friends who do that. But, you vote 3 times a day, every time you purchase something. When you align your purchasing power with your dollars, you're really making a difference. Corporations start to change and then governments get on board. But with this, it's hard for consumers to be the driving factor here because education is so much a part of it. And perhaps they didn't know really what's in their dog food. What are you finding that's driving this? Consumers that are saying, change our dog food, or you're having to really put forth the education and drive the change? So
what's really interesting is that there are a lot of pet parents out there who are looking for something healthier for their pet. Sure. And so what we found is that 80% of our customers are not vegan or vegetarian. Obviously, 20% are very proud, supporting, and many of the people who are making comments here, thank you so much to everyone that's feeding Wild Earth. We all love you a lot. Hey, Emma, great seeing you. Thank you for all the amazing work you're doing at Vegconomist. So, by the way, if you don't read Vegconomist, you should. They do incredible work. Yes.
Vegconomist.com.
Yeah, vegconomist.com. And so, they're looking for something healthier. And so, very similar to Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, we're seeing that our customers are just looking for something healthier for their pets. And the fact that it's, cruelty-free, the fact that it's sustainable are good things for them. Obviously, for some of us, it's a driver, right? Like, I want to end factory farming. I want to end the slaughter of animals. Like, that is one of my driving factors. I care deeply about the environment as well. But, for many consumers, that's not the case. And so, they're looking for healthy, and we're totally okay with that. If they just want a healthier dog food, we're here for them, right? And so that's really what's driving these consumers. There's a lot of misunderstandings. Some pet parents didn't know that dogs can eat plant-based. They actually, they're like, wait, the dog can eat plant-based. It's like, yes, they actually can.
Just like people. So much of this really parallels the plant-based issues for food. It's health-driven first, and then people think they're carnivores, but really we're omnivores. And some would argue that we're actually plant eaters by nature because of our long intestinal tract. We're really more plant-based foods. But yeah, things like peanut butter, sweet potatoes, my dogs love them.
And Elizabeth, one of the things, whenever anyone tells me, oh, humans are, true omnivores, we need meat and whatever else. And I'm like, have you looked at gorillas? gorillas are basically plant-based. Like they'll occasionally eat a little insect off a tree or something, but like they basically eat plants. Even chimpanzees, which occasionally eat a little bit of meat here and there, are primarily plant-based. So basically all of our cousins in the, in the upper primates and the greater primates are plant-based, right?
Yes.
So what makes us think that we're any different to them?
Yes, right. Advertising by meat and dairy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing
other
this.
than that, yeah. What is it? Milk does the body good, right? Except if you don't like cancer. What is it? You don't like cancer, bone loss, and various other things.
Yes, osteoporosis.
Yeah. Osteoporosis and whatever else. Yeah.
Milk does the body good until you're sued and you have to take the campaign away. Okay.
Exactly.
But you mentioned
that
that.
Cigarette here with you, right?
Oh, I just love interviewing you. You're so fantastic. Okay, so you had mentioned that mushrooms are in your dog food. So I want to kind of take that fungi and move to what I'm seeing, but really more importantly, I want to know what you're seeing is we have these plant-based foods.
Yeah.
Awesome and rock star. We have cellular, and we can talk about cellular cultivated meat and where that's going. But we also have this surge in mycelium. So the network of tendons, this is the wrong word. I'm out of my scientific realm. The network of the beginnings of the growings of a mushroom.
Yeah, you're talking about the so basically what ends up happening is most of us think of mushrooms as the reproductive organ of the fungi. That's actually, a mushroom is just, it's actually where the spores come out from. And so they basically have, oh my goodness, I'm now also blanking on the essentially the root structure of the mushroom.
Yes,
that's where the majority of the mushrooms, the fungi, right? The fungi,
yes.
That's actually where the organisms live. The top part is just the reproductive organs, kind of like a fruit, right? A fruit that goes above the ground.
Exactly right. So the network, and for lack of a better expression, I'll say the intelligence of that mushroom is all in the mycelium, the little foundation.
There you got it.
Mycelium. It's mycelium. So I'm seeing this surge in innovation around mycelium. I'm seeing this surge so much so that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, cultivated meat might not go to the side, but it will be a back runner to fermentation. I'm just seeing these things coming so fast and swift. And as I said to you right before we started, next week I'll be in Chicago going to Back of the Yards Algae Sciences. I love them for all the work that they do with algae, and Nature's Find, which does so much with fermentation in microbes. Little sort of science fact here: protein only comes from plants and microbes, folks. It does not come from animals, including humans or our animal friends. So there they are doing in Chicago this work with microbes for protein. And one of the stats that the founder, Thomas Jonas, shared with me is the amount of meat you get from a cow, which takes, let's say 18 months really, and that's on lots of hormones to make that poor thing grow so fast in the dark in a bad factory. Okay, you can make that same amount of meat in like 4 hours with fermentation of microbes. So I wondered if you could share with us your thoughts on fermentation, what we're going to see coming out of that, and the work with mushrooms that you're seeing in your world.
Yeah, I mean, fermentation is here, right? Mushrooms are here. Yeah, I mean, it's here. This is not a technology that's coming in a couple of years. It's like, Eben Bayer from Atlas Foods has been one of the pioneers for many years in this space. He actually, he started Ecovative, which actually was focused on replacing packaging. So replacing, the little styrofoam peanuts with mushroom, with the mushroom mycelium, which was super creative. Michael Works is actually replacing leather with a mycelium leather. And so like these are all technologies that are here and are ready. I think what's interesting is that we kind of forgot the third big kingdom of life, right? So we have plants, animals, and fungi.
And microbes.
And fungi, right? And so often people think that fungi or mushrooms are actually plants. So, I know this because at Wild Earth, when we launched our yeast and plant-based product, it was very confusing for people because they were like, well, yeast is a plant or mushrooms are plants. And it was like, well, no. And so we tried to educate consumers on the difference. We ended up saying, okay, look, we're mostly plant-based, but we have some fungi. We're just going to go with plant-based because people understand what plant-based is. Yeah. They think that mushrooms are plants. And so we went with that. But the reality of it is it's this whole other kingdom of life that is spectacular. for people that are obsessed with mushrooms, and they're actually like, some of the mushroom hunters, mycologists, they call themselves mycologists, the study of fungi. There is so much diversity in fungi, in mushrooms, whether it's therapeutic diversity. I mean, some of these mushrooms, the extracts of these mushrooms are actually used in therapeutic drugs to treat cancers, right? Actually to treat them. These are approved drugs to treat cancers, all the way through to, some of the potential health benefits we know that they appear to have, whether it's neuronal growth. I personally am a big fan of magic mushrooms. I actually think the therapeutic potential for people who have anxiety, PTSD, deep depression is very powerful. It's treated like a medicine because it is. It's very powerful, and so you have to be very careful. You wouldn't overdose or take a medicine without a medical supervision. You shouldn't do that with magic mushrooms. I know this is a controversial perspective, but I've seen people really helped with what's called treatment-resistant depression who have taken magic mushrooms, and it really has been very powerful and spiritual experience for them. I personally have had many, spiritual experiences with magic mushrooms and other psychedelics. But treat it with caution. Yeah, college. There we go. College. Yeah. I didn't do college. I was scared of them. I was really scared of them. I was like, oh, it's going to fry my brain. And in the end, I was like, well, I only live once. So let's see what happens. Right. So Elizabeth, you two traveled to the other side.
I did senior year of college graduation day. So there's that. there's a fun tidbit
I have a feeling that's an entire long episode that we.
That's an evening episode, Ryan.
You broke on through to the other side.
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. All I'll say is that same year I had read, I think it's Ken Kesey's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. So, it all was a theme that I was working with as part of my studies. So.
Amazing. And amazing, right? Like it is, it exposes you to a way of perceiving the world that is so utterly different from the day-to-day experiences we have.
Yes. And I'll say a rejuvenative break from the world that, I hadn't realized I needed. So, and I loved that other perspective you say, traveling to the other side. It really was like a journey. It really, and when I came back, I felt so refreshed for having gotten out of my own box, and for seeing things from another way. So
you got out of your own box, right?
Exactly. For those of us on Facebook, you can see us, how I went through the box. Yeah. It's just, but that's why I say almost the intelligence of mushrooms. So much can be done there from the medicinal perspective, but what you're seeing in plant innovation. And I think a lot we haven't even uncovered yet. So we're back to the innovation in our food and how that's a natural as we advance as a society of people, and how we advance our food to go along with us. Yeah. So when I think of, products made out of mushrooms, of course. So we've got Wild Earth, but I also think of Meaty coming out of Colorado. Yeah. Are you familiar with them?
I am, and they're very delicious. I've actually had chips that they had. Once upon a time, they had it Emergy. They were called Emergy before, right? And I've had their chips, very tasty. Was it Emergy?
I'm not sure. I tried their banh mi steak sandwich made out of mushrooms.
Oh, wow. I have not tried that. I'm sure it's very delicious.
Yeah, Boulder, Colorado. You can try them there. It's very good. And then, are you familiar with Fable Foods?
Yes, and I have had some Fable Foods.
Good.
They came to visit us at Wild Earth just before the lockdown. So unfortunately now we're all in lockdown. But just before the lockdown, and the Wild Earth team actually had a bunch of their fabled pork.
No, I think it's braised beef.
Sorry, braised beef. Yes.
Oh, good. Yes. Yes. So good. So I think just as we talk about sort of our predictions or what people can expect to see, you're just going to see more and more coming from mushrooms, mycelium, that entire area. Fermentation, as you say, is here. Fermentation, that quick growth, like Perfect Day would be a great example of talk about a company that has gone so quickly, not just in their funding, but to actually have something to market with their ice cream robot. Oh my gosh.
Was it Brave Robot?
Brave Robot, which I have not tried. But
I have not tried. I've been trying to get to, I think on the West Coast, it's at Smitten. I think you can find them at Smitten. I just haven't been able to go to, I've been dying to go to Smitten, and they offered to send me some, and I was just moving all around. But I'm very excited to try it. I've heard it's really creamy and really delicious. It tastes like real ice cream.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Perfect Day is fermenting real dairy protein by taking the genes of cow cells and then adding sugar, fermenting, and coming up with actual whey and casein protein. These are the proteins that are in milk, whey and casein, and then going ahead and putting that in ice cream just as you would regularly. So they don't have the cow involved, but the rest is dairy. It's fascinating what we're coming to see.
And it's bioidentical, Elizabeth. It's bioidentical. So it's the same as in nature, but without the animals, which is what's so amazing to me about Perfect Day.
Yes, how they've been able to do that again talk about Brave New World, the innovation. So you were talking about the wealth that Beyond Meat is creating in 1 year. Talk about the innovation we're seeing in 1 year in a new and safer food supply, and what that means for us as a society, as we hope to have a safer society. Hopefully we're not going to go through this pandemic thing again and again and again. It would be nice if we learned something, and we move towards a safer food supply. That's plant-based foods, folks. I don't know else how to say that. Safer food supply is plant-based foods.
And Elizabeth, one thing that Susan actually mentioned about Dr. Greger, a quote from Dr. Greger: "The array of unique micronutrients that may boost our immune system function." So thank you, Susan, for that. We have a treat coming on the Wild Earth front. So we have already launched to our subscribers. We have launched 3 new plant-based supplements, all made with science, but plant-based supplements for digestion immunity. We have a mixture of all of those mushrooms, the reikis, the rishis, coming, right? So, and yeah, Tom, so do I sometimes. Yeah, Tom wishes he was tripping again. Yeah, it's not that bad of a spot to be in. Some people prefer cannabis. I prefer mushrooms. So but Susan, so stay posted. October 5th. So in a couple days, we're going to be launching it to the broader public. So we're going to have this line of 3 new supplements. So digestion and immunity. Hip and joint. We've had a lot of our pet parents looking for a plant-based hip and joint supplement. We've got it. It's coming. Our subscribers for the Wild Earth Dog Food are already enjoying it. And then we have skin and coat as well. So that's been another one that's been asked for, especially for dogs that have very sensitive skins. So yeah, it's coming. It's on its way. It's coming. Stay posted on the Wild Earth. Facebook, Instagram. We'll be launching it October 5th. And for those of the subscribers that are on here, feel free to share, your experiences. I've heard very positive things. And by the way, just as a side note, I've actually eaten all those supplements myself. So just in case anyone was wondering, I prefer the Wild Earth Dog Food to the supplements. The supplements are a little chewy, but other than that, they're all good, all plant-based. It's a mixture of plant-based, mushroom-based, and algae-based products, depending on what we're looking for in terms of the actives. And so we have scientifically backed actives on there as well.
And so you can go to wildearth.com and you can order direct to consumer right there. And of course, as he was saying, please share all your comments, because there's a lot of pet parents that want to know and they don't know. They want healthier options for their dogs, particularly the joint problems are a big issue.
The joint one is a big one. Yeah, especially for senior dogs. My dog is a senior as well. And so she, her joints are okay, but it doesn't hurt to kind of give her a little extra. I actually give her the hip and joint because it's just in case. I want to make sure her hips and her joints stay healthier for longer. So
yeah, wildearth.com. Thank you, Ryan, for that. So we were talking about innovations that we're seeing in mushrooms and fermentation. What about AI? I think that is our next step about discovering through artificial intelligence what phytonutrients are actually in plants that maybe we don't realize that can be healthful benefits for us. And for sure, we don't want to process them out. So I think AI and helping to map out our food is going to be a big area. What do you think? I
think it's super interesting. And in fact, like the nutrients, the phytonutrients that we don't even fully appreciate now. So one of my favorites is actually strawberries. So I spent a lot of time researching different things, and my team's probably going to kill me for this. My team at Wild Earth is probably going to kill me for this, but I love to share insights that I have when I start to look at food as medicine. And so strawberries have something called phycetine. Have you heard of phycetine? Mm-mm. So phycetine is a molecule. It's natural in strawberries. I mean, strawberries are very delicious, but phycetine is it's a molecule that kills senescent cells. So what are senescent cells? Senescent cells are old cells that build up in the body as you age. And it appears that when you kill senescent cells, the organism, whatever the organism, whether it's a human or whether it's another animal, appears to be healthier and live longer as a result of that. And so it's really interesting that, in nature, there are molecules that actually kill cells that are not good for us, right? That are actually, it's a normal part of the aging process, but it helps us clear them out. And so, I wish I could share more about that. That's really about as much as I know about phyzatine, but it's an area that is absolutely fascinating to me, that we can start to explore not just how we can, extend the healthy lifespan of our, beloved pets, but ourselves too, through plant-based products.
Yes, and unlock the key. There's so much in nature that is there yet to be unlocked, and I think artificial intelligence is going to help us do that.
100%, yeah.
So stay on the lookout for that. Are those the kind of things you're investing in, or are you investing more in plant-based CPG products?
So primarily plant-based CPG products, recombinant and cell-based, but the Knot company uses. Thank you, Tina. Yeah, this is. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Keep asking questions. By the way, keep asking questions. We're always, between Elysabeth and I, we can probably go pretty much anywhere, right? You never know what you're gonna get.
For all today, everybody.
And Anna, for sure, Nature Heals. She's a first aid box. I mean, Elysabeth was mentioning mushrooms before. The medicinal properties of mushrooms are absolutely fascinating. And honestly, if there was a company working on AI for, actives in mushrooms or plants, I would be super into that. So we will be happy to cut that first check for those types of companies, Elysabeth. So we'll range anywhere on the technology side. We'll go deep tech, and we'll go more CPG plant-based as well.
Well, so there I challenge corporations. So we were talking about how some of the CEOs that you've been talking about, they're like, oh, this plant-based thing, I don't know, I'm not really ready to invest 10 million, but I'll invest 400 million in a slaughterhouse, which is completely 100%. 150 years behind the times, let's say. So they haven't quite gotten up to speed with plant-based. I challenge corporations here to get with the program, because I do know that there are companies like Brightseed that are looking to do all this sort of AI intelligence work. The tech is there. What they don't have is the companies that are interested in this kind of information, and therefore they don't have the clients. Right now, Brightseed is working with Dannon on how to unlock the benefits of plants so that they can use them in dairy, but we need many more companies that are interested in unlocking the potential of fruits and vegetables to actually employ the AI. So I challenge corporations to kind of get into 2020. Could you? That's all I'm asking.
Or we replace them, right? Or they get disrupted. If they don't make better, newer products, then we replace them. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I started Wild Earth. I co-founded Wild Earth because I didn't see change coming for pet food anytime soon, right? It's dominated by 4 big companies. They have about 100 different brands, but it's the same companies. The companies, we all know Mars and Nestle and General Mills. Weirdly, Smuckers also makes dog food. So that's they're one of the big players in the dog food space. Nothing wrong with that, but the problem is, as we know, these big companies aren't really innovators. They're not bringing new innovation to the marketplace. They're quite happy with just having a simple product. In the case of dog food formulas haven't changed for many decades in some cases, decades. And our understanding of nutrition has, right? Same thing for human food, by the way.
Yes. If these corporations don't get with the program, you're just kind of giving a hockey hip check to the future of food. And that doesn't serve us. So I love that you say a little bit of carrot, a little bit of stick.
There's always a little bit of stick. Yeah. Carrots over here. It's like, hey, wake up, Dan. And by the way, Dannon is actually very, very forward-looking. Yeah. I think the CEO recently said something like, in a couple of years, 50% of their product line will be plant-based. Yes. I don't know if you saw that. It was very interesting. And so, they are very forward-looking. Obviously, I think all of us would wish they would change faster and say 100%, like Vivera. Vivera was a meat company and said, we're going to be 100% plant-based meat company in Europe.
Yes. Yeah. And they're taking the world by storm. And, if you're only interested in bettering your bottom line, I certainly don't fault you for that. There's a lot of equity in being first. So I do say hats off to Dannon for going down this path, but there's a lot of room to play here, and everyone would benefit if you went faster, and your bottom line included.
Yeah. And just wanted to say thank you to Jenny for all the great work she's doing. She's reaching us from Liberia Chimpanzee Rescue. That is amazing. Thank you for all the incredible work you're doing for our fellow primates.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. So happy that you can get us from West Africa. Thank you for all you do. So I want to ask you, there's the cellular world as well, cultivated meat. And then of course we have our CPG plant-based products. It's still going to be a long time to market for cultivated meat. We'll see if fermentation ends up disrupting them. I wonder what you think about the future of cultivated meat. Are they going to be put to the side because of fermentation? Or do you see them aiding in more blended products? So cultivated fat getting into the plant-based CPG to make a tastier veggie burger. What do you think?
I love that. I love the blended. I actually think that meat's death stroke, so animal agriculture's death stroke, is going to come from cell ag. I think that there are plenty of people who are basically saying, oh, that's not real meat, that's fake meat, that's plant-based meat, that's coming out of microbes, it's fermented, it's not real. But when we have real meat without the cow, right, then that changes everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is the end of factory farming. That is the end of animal agriculture. Like, I think that's what cell-based meat is going to bring to us. And the first products are coming to market in 2022. So Shiok Meats has basically said in Singapore, because the government in Singapore does not have a legacy meat and dairy industry, there's no one lobbying to stop these companies coming onto the market. So in 2022, Shiok will launch their shrimp meat and shrimp broth products. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of the end for the meat industry.
Mm-hmm. This is so exciting, Ryan, because in our lifetime, it's not just for Gen Z. In our lifetime, we are watching one of the world's largest transformations. It's so exciting. And I'll say, as we compliment people, hats off to Singapore. Hats off to the Singaporean government for getting behind so many entrepreneurs. They've been very active in giving grants and subsidies. And Singapore, I hope I have this right, a city-state that makes only about 11% of its own food. So they're very dependent on other countries around the world. A horrible place to be if you want to start trading with people, to be subject to other foreign entities deciding on if you get food or not. Obviously not a place you want to be. So they're really trying to get their own food sources. And if you don't have a lot of arable land, this is also true for China, you're going to be looking at things like cellular meat, where you don't need land, you don't need as much water, you're not cutting down trees. All these things go away and you can start making your own food supply.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what your time's like. I see you looking. You might be. Are you stretched for time?
We're okay. Good. I checked the time. We're good. Okay. And Anna, I love that. I agree. Let's do less harm. That is, that's a way to live life, right? Let's do less harm to the animals, to the environment, to other people, right? To be mindful and kind to other people. That's a powerful way to live.
Amen. And I'm not religious, but amen.
Yeah, exactly. We can namaste, yes. Right? Namaste.
Exactly right. So let me ask you, because I do have more, I've only got you for a little bit here, so I just want to get as much from you as I can. So what would you like to see in the market that isn't yet there?
Ooh, what would I like to see in the market that isn't yet there? That's a really interesting question. You know what I really would love? I would love some really great plant-based steaks.
Okay. Yeah, we're a while from that yet, I think. Well, I think bacon and ribs are going to come before steak, maybe. I don't know.
I would love a plant-based steak. Like, I've heard rumors of some small companies, some entrepreneurs working on plant-based steak. I can't wait to try it. But I haven't yet seen a really great plased steak.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ryan wants it, people. So get on it.
And by the way, apply. If you have a plant-based steak that has to taste really good, right? It can't taste like rubber. It can't taste like lentils compressed into a thing. I've had those. I've had some stuff where I'm like, this does not taste like meat. It tastes like some lentils and some carrots squished together, which is nice, but it's not meat.
Baby food in solid form. No, that will not work. Such an exciting time. We will see that. We will see that in our lifetime as well. Okay. You're looking for a steak. I'm looking for, first of all, lots of materials. So just like there's a fallacy that people think that the dog food is a waste product from the animal agriculture side. It's not. Those animals are raised and harmed for dog food independently. It's its own industry. So is true with leathers and materials. I always thought that leather was a byproduct of animal agriculture, and it is not. It is indeed its own industry doing its nefarious things with pollutants to the earth and as well as animals. And I thought, oh, it was being really efficient. And in fact, it is doubly inefficient. So I would like to see things like wool, a really good, plant-based wool. I also, and maybe Ryan, you are the answer. Maybe you've actually solved this for me with your rolling fund, but I would like to see more plant-based options on the stock market so that I can trade them like regular stocks and get in at a small level. Now, when you get in with something like Ryan's fund at a $5,000 level, it's almost at the same level that somebody might get in on a couple hundred of stocks. So maybe I don't need it as much anymore because of what you've done this week.
I think we need all of the above. So I personally would also love to have other options in the public markets that are fully aligned with my personal beliefs, like more Beyond Meats. Like, where could we get more Beyond Meats, basically? Yeah. I think that's starting to happen. We're not quite there yet. But, obviously there are other options like the sustainable food ventures on AngelList platform. Hopefully there's going to be a lot more. But those are not as easily tradable as stocks, right? I think that's the big challenge, right? If you buy Beyond Meat, you can sell it tomorrow. If you invest in sustainable food ventures, you're in until there's a significant exit, and that could be 10 years. So this is a long-term investment versus a short-term investment.
Right. And so that's a barrier to entry for people. Although we are seeing SPACs, which are these sort of blank check shell companies, which have large funds. I'm trying to simplify this, which have large funds that then once they are allowed on the marketplace, they can take smaller plant-based companies public. So 2020, I think it was The Guardian, or maybe it was TechCrunch. I'm not sure, but one of the articles was saying, 2020 is the year of the SPAC. So we'll sort of keep our eye on that. Okay. We've talked a lot about what's coming down the pipeline, but I don't know if you have any predictions for the next 3 to 5 years. What's going to be the real driver?
Oh, the real driver of what? Of SPAC?
Of the next 3 to 5 years. Where do you see things going in food, period?
So let's go for 5 years, because I think that gets even more interesting, right? So if we're at 5 years, clean meat will be on the market, right? So now we're going to have recombinant products, which will be probably at a similar stage to plant-based now, right? So the Perfect Days, the Clara Foods, the Gel Tours, they will be on the market. They will have, they'll have significant revenue, right? Very similar to some of the plant-based companies. The cell-based meat companies will probably be at the same stage that the recombinant companies are at, which they have some revenue, they have some sales, but they're just getting off the ground. And we will have seen, so if Rethink X is correct, by 2030, we're going to see the essential extinction of factory farms and animal ag, particularly within dairy and, sorry, I have a little bug flying around there. So, so we're going to try and see, so I think we're actually going to see, this is my prediction. So, so for every $100 million in revenue that drops from animal ag, that has to go somewhere, right? It's not like people will stop buying yogurt, they'll buy plant-based yogurt, right? It's not like they'll stop buying milk, they'll buy plant-based milk. And so for every $100 million in revenue that goes away from animal ag, that means about $100 million in revenue is going to go to somewhere, right? In the plant-based space. And so I'm going to predict that for every 100 million in revenue, we're going to see a new unicorn, a new plant-based unicorn, a new recombinant unicorn, a new cell-based unicorn emerge. That's a company that's worth over $1 billion in market cap. These will become big companies, which means they have big resources to invest in R&D, sales, marketing, and to fight some of the regulatory nonsense that many of these old industries are trying to put up. Oh, you can't call it milk, you can't call it butter, you can't call it
sausage.
Right, sausage and various other things. And so I think that when we look at the landscape in 5 years from now, we're going to say, oh, wasn't it funny that we thought that, having just Beyond Meat as this, $10 billion plus company was like amazing. And now we have 100 of these Beyond Meat type companies, right? Now, and that's going to be incredible to see. And in some cases, they are going to replace some of the existing established companies, right? Like some of the Tysons of the world. Tyson is actually pretty active in investing in these types of companies, but some of the less adaptive companies are going to go, extinct themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The Dean Foods of the world, right? The Dean Foods of the world that will just go bankrupt because they're not adapting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to have conversations about Dean Foods, and it's going to be like, oh, do you remember when there was Dean Foods and you had a telephone that was attached to the wall? It's going to be like that. Do you remember when you had a typewriter? Yeah. No more. No more, my friends. Adapt or die. And that applies to you, meat and dairy. Adapt or die. Okay, so much has changed in the last 3 years, but since obviously COVID, it's been this enormous time for entrepreneurs. It's not just people who have time and are cooking in their kitchens, but it's innovators who have time now and are also doing more cooking in their kitchen. I'm wondering, in this very rapid change time, you've moved to Raleigh, Durham, and you've got now Wild Earth East Coast as well as Wild Earth West Coast. I'm wondering what you wish you knew 3 years ago that you know now.
What I wish I knew 3 years ago that I knew now, how important it is to move quickly. So I thought I knew that until I started to engage with the commercial marketplace. And the thing is, you often make mistakes by making assumptions when you start building a company about what consumers want, what they care about, the types of things that they want. So when we first launched Wild Earth, we had koji in our treats. We still have koji in our treats. I made the mistake of thinking that consumers go, oh, wow, koji, like in miso soup and soy sauce. I love that. Many consumers made the mistake of thinking koji was a berry. They thought it was a goji berry, right? Oh, sure. Rather than a fungi, they thought it was a goji berry. They're like, oh, I love goji berries. It's funny that you're putting berries into dog treats, but sure, why not? And so it was a real way of learning about the marketplace. Assumptions are dangerous, and the quickest way to understand whether you have a true product market fit is to as quickly as you can, get out into the marketplace and start interacting with consumers. I did it too slow. Right? Wild Earth moved too slowly. We've since learned we're now much faster. But I thought we were moving fast, but we could have moved much faster. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was one of my big reflections. It's like, even if you're not there, even if you're not in the co-packer, go and bake it at home. Then go to the commercial kitchen. Then go to the co-packer, right? Like, get moving faster. Don't wait for the co-packer.
And I would say, don't forget that farmer's market. Get that proof of concept that people like it.
Get the farmer's market. Yeah.
And you're seeing right now, no one's sampling in grocery stores, obviously. Yeah. Go direct to consumer. You can sample direct to consumer as well. So don't hold back. You can't get it in the grocery store, but start telling people on Instagram that you will send out small, particularly if they're going to talk about it and give you feedback and fill out the questionnaire. And if they like it, go on Instagram, send them those small packets. Do not wait to get that consumer feedback.
Yeah. Elizabeth, like Renegade Foods is an example of a company that was launched essentially during the pandemic. So Renegade Foods, they basically had to go direct to consumer. They had this vision of being served with wine, and plant-based charcuteries and Miyoko's cheese, and they had this vision of how it would go. The pandemic changed everything, right? Yeah. And now they have to go direct to consumer. And now but the beauty of it is they're selling. Like, they're selling. They're on the market. They're selling, and they're delivering throughout the U.S. now. But it was a challenge to them. They wanted to roll out in food service. They were forced to go direct to consumer.
Yeah, and those companies that were dependent on food service alone, plant-based or other, they are now not with us. So got to adapt, as you say, got to adapt and super fast. Yeah. Okay, so if you're having a bad day and during COVID, maybe you've had a couple of them. Is there a phrase that you say to get yourself back in the game?
Yeah, actually, I'm always reminded of actually a Steve Jobs quote about our time is limited, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just a really powerful reminder for me personally that our time is limited here. And so we have a limited amount of time to make a positive impact. And so for me, it's like, what is the symphony? I was born one day, and one day I will no longer be here. What's the symphony I want to create in between? Like, what are the positive things, the good things that I want to create in the world before I'm no longer here, right? And it's a legacy that I can give to those that come after me. And so that's really a focus for me. Whenever I'm like, oh, things are so hard, like, why can't things be easier? Why can't this, thing that happened that's really bad not happen? And it's like, I have to keep this all into context. It's like, hey, you're here right now. like do something good. Whether it's going for a walk in the forest to feel good, to enjoy being alive in this moment in time, whether it's, reaching out to someone, whether it's just trundling along on the business side of things. It's very powerful. Just reminding myself, I have limited time. I need to appreciate every moment.
I love that. I like to say, nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky, and a body in motion stays in motion. And I say that to myself a lot because
you're very much emotion.
Yes, I'm very much emotion. So are you. So, I mean, talk about changing the world. I'm just so grateful. You alone, you move the needle for people, the planet, and animals. And other people do too. But I mean, we're all trying to make our mark. I can tell you from watching you and all that you've done, you have made such a big difference for people.
I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate it a lot. I love hearing that and I appreciate it. But there are so many people that have helped me get to this point. And so I'm so appreciative. I could not do the things that I do without the people who have supported me and who have provided, literally everything to enable me to do the things that I do. And so whether that's my team at Wild Earth, whether that's, the investors, the supporters, the partners, our consumers, right? The Wild Earth consumers who took a risk on us when we were no one and nothing. And so I give thanks for everyone. I always remind myself of that because, there are moments when you're like, I did this. And it's like, yeah, you did this with everyone. The entire village helped you do it, right? Yeah. And it's like, yes, so it keeps me humble. And it's like, okay, so I need to be ready when people need help from me. I need to be ready to help them to achieve the great things that they're going to achieve too.
So we're back to sustainable venture foods. And also maybe I've given so many shout outs on the show. Maybe I should give a shout out to your parents too. Because,
why not? Thank you. Thank you for my existence. Yeah.
Okay, so my last question for you, and then Ryan, stay put. Everybody else, I will see you next week. But my last question for you, so you're super busy, you're running around, you're moving across country. Yeah, you don't have time for lunch. What's your go-to snack? And it can't be your own dog food treats, which I know you like to eat. I've seen you eat them.
I do like to eat them, and I don't eat them as an alternative. So I love Cliff Bars. And so if I want a quick snack, I'll have a Cliff Bar. And actually, recently, the Alpha Burritos, have you tried those Alpha Burritos? You can just microwave them. They're such a quick and easy snack. Yes. And I love them. I know that, Nestle's tried to kind of make copycats of them, Sweet Earth. I don't like the Sweet Earth ones. They don't taste good. Go for the Alpha ones. They're really tasty. So I love them. I actually keep a couple of them frozen. The founders originally sent me, right? They sent me some and I tried them. I was like, I love these. These are amazing. Yeah. And you can just microwave them. They're ready, right?
I'll give a shout out. Have you tried Cool Beans?
You know what? I have not. I'd like
very good. I talk to the founders all the time. I'll see if you want me to, I'll see if they'll send you.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'd love to. I love it when people send me random stuff. They're like, hey, I'm going to send you this thing to try and eat. And it's like, great. I'll just put it up on I don't have a huge following on Instagram or LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn is a little bigger, but Instagram, I have a tiny following. I'm like, cool, I'll put it on Instagram. Thank you.
I get so many people sending me things and I think to myself, this is so awesome. We're changing the world by eating. My God, what could be easier or better or more fun? I mean, it's such a positive time to be alive. Yeah. We're going to eat our way out of this issue and problem and take ourselves to a better place. Ryan Bethencourt, I want to thank you for all you do. You are so incredibly wonderful. If you care about your pets like you care about your family, and certainly I sure do, you want to go to wildearth.com and get great, healthy dog food. Is there cat food coming? Somebody way early in the comments asked if cat food.
So we are working on a cat food. We want to make sure when we launch that cat food, we've spent a lot of time. Cat food is going to take more cruelty-free testing. So we're not quite ready with that. We want to make sure when we come out with the cat food, because cats are obligate carnivores, we want to make sure they have everything they need to be nutritionally balanced. So whereas dogs are omnivores like us, we need to be a little more careful with cats. But it is coming. It's on my personal wish list. And so we're working on it right now.
So very exciting. And then if you want more information about sustainable food ventures, how do we do that?
Yeah, so sustainablefoodventures.com. Right there. You can apply. We've actually had about 10 people already apply in the last 2 days for funding, which is great. And actually, we've had another 3 to 5 people apply to invest in sustainable food ventures, which you can also get, there's a little invest link and it just goes directly to AngelList. So you can also click on there and invest on there as well. So you can either apply for funding or invest. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. I'm just so excited about it because I'm going to do that basically right now. So as we get off, I'm going to go.
Awesome. Thank you. You heard it here first, right? It's breaking news, right? Elizabeth is now a backer of sustainable food ventures.
Yes, everybody. So follow my lead if you can. And of course, investing is a tricky thing and it's very personal. And so, that's not advice. That's my sort of joy of sharing what I'm going to be doing myself. More for that to come on social media. Did you have one more thing?
Yeah, I had one more thing, just around investing. It's really important that people understand that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Do not invest if you think that you're going to make millions and millions off of investing. Hopefully, we'll make a great return, really an incredible return, but you could lose it all, right? It's really important to really view it from that perspective. The reason that I am doing this and that I personally have been cutting checks out of my own pocket for these companies is that I want to support them in their mission. That's why I'm doing it. I hope one day I'll make money so I can honestly take that money and do it again and support the next generation of founders. But it's really important that whenever you do this, you really think about it from a mindful perspective. This is if you want to try and get rich quick, I don't know, maybe go to the stock market or something. If you can figure that out, great. I'm not a great stock market investor, but I'm pretty good at picking companies that make a positive difference in the world. So that was just a little caveat there, just to make sure people are clear that it's like, this is something that I take very seriously and it's very mindful about it. And so I want to make sure that people who join us in this journey to co-invest with us through the fund understand that this is a place for patience and supporting these founders.
And it's really rolling the dice. Come on, lucky seven, but you don't know how it's going to shake out, and you could lose it all. But still have the joy of investing and hoping to move the world forward, which is what we try to do on this show, the Plant-Based Business Hour. Ryan, I really do hope that you'll come back. I'd love to do this sort of every 6 months as we talk about where we are now, because it's changing so quickly. Though it's our world, our food supply is changing every 6 months in a significant way. So Ryan Bethencourt will be back. Ryan, I thank you for all you do. Everybody, if you want more information about the Plant-Based Business Hour, go to ElysabethAlfano.com/PBH or Plant-Based-Business-Hour. Find us on LinkedIn. Both Ryan and I are there. Ryan, again, thank you. He'll be back. Everybody else, I will see you next week. And Ryan, don't go away. Everybody else, I'll see you next weekend for another Plant-Based Business Hour. Together, we're taking back our health, the health of the planet, and the health of our bottom line.